Spoiler alert.
So I'm looking at my messages to you because I'm just trying to
Okay.
let's see. Oh, when Kimmy got left at home by herself and she like jumped on the sofa and she was trying to do the thing. I think she saw it on a
She
commercial.
had her singing in the rain moment.
Yes, yes. And I said I would totally fall off.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I did struggle with that a little bit because Kimmy's small. She's a short little thing. And I'm like, could she tip that sofa over? But figure she rolled it over.
And then all of Benji's antics, like when he has the Q-tip or whatever he chose to clean his ear with, and then he just like left it there.
Benji has my heart. Benji so has my heart. He was, I said I wanted a diverse group, and I feel like an underrepresented group is people who maybe aren't socially the best. They're great people, they're smart people, they're worthy, valid people, but socially they're a little awkward. And I just love him.
They're real.
Yeah. I mean, we all have these people in our lives, and we all say things like, it's Benji. It's fine.
Yeah, it's whoever. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I love that they include him.
Yes, I love that too. And I love that he and Ruby, got together and everything. That made my heart happy.
That Ruby was like this crazy dark character that I hadn't planned on, but I was looking for a balance to Jackson, and that was it.
And funny about Jackson, several times during the book, you mentioned that somebody thought the Joy was a Black woman. I always thought of Jackson as the privileged white man.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kept reminding myself he's not white. I mean, he's Middle Eastern, right?
Yeah.
United Arab Emirates.
Yeah.
Like he's Middle Eastern, and a lot of times in our country, Middle Eastern people are, ostracized just like a lot of others.
Right.
And for me, it was like I had to keep pulling that prejudice back.
Yeah.
I feel like, especially growing up where I did, the prejudice, the racism, the assumed cultures of the people that you see based on their appearance is just ingrained. It's just there. And I feel like there's a lot of things that I've had to unlearn over the years. And so, my immediate thought of him being white just because he had money and he, was putting a Ninja Warrior equipment in his house, that was a lot of fun, by the way.
Love that.
And I want to see the picture of him and Steph. Like, I feel like that would be very steamy and fun to see. But
wait till the third book.
Oh, sweet. That's what I saw. I saw a white man, and being able to read about the different characters, about their culture, where they're from, how their parents react to them, sometimes based on tradition specific to that culture, things like that. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I felt a fair amount of responsibility with that. I mean, first of all, if Jackson was white, he'd have a lot of money. He's from the UAE. He's got stupid money. I mean, he comes from madness money. But I had to, some of these cultures I've spent time with, some I haven't. And I've had to have, I've done a research, a lot of talking to people who've lived in different places, people who that's their parents, and all of those things. And that was interesting.
Yeah.
But he's got crazy money. And when I interviewed a couple people who had lived in the UAE to find out about like what crazy money is really about, I was shocked.
Wow.
I mean, I knew it was nuts, but it was like, no, we had a tiger, like there's a tiger.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. Well, I will say that I have a crush on Carmen. I totally have a crush on Carmen.
I love Carmen too. She, I love her because she's beautiful and disgusting.
Like she really is.
has no, she just,
No filter. No.
yeah.
I have to, okay. So I have a crush
She has
on,
the filter of somebody who is not as attractive as she is.
right. Yeah. I think I have a crush on Carmen just because of the charm, but I think Kimmy would be the one that I would hang out with. Kimmy and the Joy. I think they would be a lot of fun to hang out
Kimmy and the Joy together are, like to me, the best odd couple.
with. Yes. They're a lot of fun to listen to. Like I love the chapters of Kimmy and the Joy, and just hearing their conversations crack me up. Yeah.
Those are some of my favorite chapters in the first book when I wrote that, because they were really the only two that were together, and they're so mismatched, but wonderfully so. And they kind of, they're thrown by each other yet completely accepting.
Right. I like how the Joy goes to make a sandwich and Kimmy's like, I wonder what she's going to throw together today. And the first one I think was like 2 pieces of pizza with tuna in between. And I was like, ugh.
The tuna salad in the middle.
Yeah. And then Kimmy's like, And then the Joy, she found a scale or something in the tuna. And she's like,
she found a tuna scale in the tuna. So that's a quirk of mine. So if I find a tuna scale, it's over. But me being Kimmy, like I would have totally eaten that. Like if I saw the pizza with a good tuna salad in the middle and pizza on top, I'd have to know.
Well, I love that. I thought that Kimmy was grossed out, and then she looked at it and she's like, "You gonna finish that?" She's like, "No, I can't finish it." Oh, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Oh, she's gonna eat it. That's hilarious. Yeah, I love it. Oh my gosh. Yeah, and I just saw a message I had sent that said, "I totally understand Steph's refrigerator conundrum." And I sent that to my partner because we've actually recently started trying to eat better and things like that. And so when I go to the fridge and I open it and I'm like, okay, that has a lot of carbs, that has a lot of sugar, that has I want some cereal. I do,
You're doing the mental math of like, what are the ramifications of each thing? And then when you get to like the one thing, you're like, okay, well, that doesn't have bad ramifications. You just don't even want it.
Right. When you finally get to what you can eat or feel like you can eat. Yeah, Steph, I felt so sorry for Steph. She stressed me out part of the time. I was like, girl, chill out, calm down.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I cannot imagine having a job in that kind of spotlight.
It's interesting. I've got some friends in similar kinds of jobs and the stress that they deal with of, and she's got dual stress of potentially being in front of the camera. So having to look her level best, and then just the stress of doing an incredibly good job in such a fast-paced world. I mean, news is, it's constant.
Right.
So yeah, she gets no downtime.
Whew, that's some serious stress.
Yep.
So your chapter titles, I love them. They make me one of the chapter titles was "What the Zoom?"
Uh-huh.
And I said that's totally becoming part of my vocabulary.
You may have it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then of course, Betty. Just Betty.
She is an amalgamation of several of my friends' parents.
Okay.
And I can't say more than that.
The end. That's it. That's good. That's enough spoilers of Betty.
I gotta be tight-lipped on that one, or I'll be in trouble.
Well, I did love that, towards the end, you kind of saw little bits of the what is the word I'm looking for? Compassion between them.
Yeah. I gave them a moment. I gave the Joy and Betty a moment that came from my mother and I, and because Betty has had a recent accident, a ridiculous accident, and so she needs help getting up and down. And when my mother's health was going downhill. She needed help getting up. She was very nervous about getting up. And I would stand in front of her and kind of get into a squat and put my hands out, kind of hold her. And she was so nervous, I'd just pick her up and I'd say, we won't stand up until I feel your head on my shoulder.
Wow.
And that was magic. And so I gave them that because in their weird, they don't belong together way, they're mother and daughter, and there's something about that is undeniable, no matter what has been said.
Right. No matter
And
what.
so I gave them that.
I loved that. I picked up on that. I said, okay, there it is. There's love there. It's just,
Oh yeah,
a lot, you know.
yeah. No, if the Joy didn't love her, she would have never gone.
True. Very true. Her, the masks that she wore down, yeah, my mom would blush if she heard me talk about it. But
well, okay, so Kimmy's pivot business is she's become a mask mogul.
yes.
And so she puts smart ass sayings on all of her masks. So the Joy picks some choice sayings to wear out in public.
That it makes me laugh. I love it. Also, I like that you picked up like just a little bit on the Black Lives Matter movement at the same time, because you couldn't really ignore that during that time period.
Well, that's exactly right. I'm gonna see if I can make my light a little lighter because I've got some natural lighting and the sun is going down.
You're fading away.
Let's see if that's any better. Only slightly. But anyway, yeah. So when I started all of this, I didn't want to get political because I feel like we all have so much pulling us apart. And while I have very clear theory, I have clear feelings about things. I didn't want to impose that on this story. But this is happening, you know, when the world is happening. And Black Lives Matter, particularly in New York City, to ignore that was happening and those marches were starting, I thought would have been irresponsible. And my next question then was, how was I going to deal with it? And I spoke to a lot of people who lived in New York City during that. And I talked to them about their experiences with the parades and everything. And so I really kind of shared how they felt, and I gave that voice to the characters.
That's really neat. So you do a little bit of like outside research too.
Yeah, I have to, because like I said, I went through COVID at the bottom of a ski resort. So my experience was quite different. And I lived in New York City for years. I moved to New York City right out of college, and that's where I started my career. So I know what it is like in general to be that age in New York City.
Okay.
And there were different things that I knew completely, but there were some things that, I just wasn't there for. And, I also wasn't in Florida for COVID. The reason I picked Florida is because I have some friends in Florida and some friends with family in Florida. And I saw what they were posting and I thought, you people are crazy.
Right.
Like, we need to go there because it was so different from what was happening in New York. But yeah, that was interesting.
Absolutely. So I have to go back to Kimmy for a second, because when she hadn't shaved her legs, when her girlfriend was coming over and she something just like threw out there, want to pet a monkey, like that was,
Right.
that would just cracked me up. Like that, I so feel you, Kimmy. I totally understand. It's like you try to get everything ready and everything's good and the house is clean and everything, and then it's like, I just shave my legs, really.
Right.
My the only family like heritage that I know that I have is Syrian, and so I know that I'm like, I think it's like 12.5% or so, like half of a quarter Syrian. But it's all in the hair. it's all in the hair. I tell people, if you ever see the Middle Eastern men on TV and you just see like all the eyebrow, you know, and everything, I said that's what I go through, you know, that's my heritage. So when she said that, I was laughing for sure.
Well,
Yeah. Also, you know, we're talking about Black Lives Matter. We didn't even mention Shad. I haven't brought him up at all.
you know, I just realized that we had to, you know, and that was always, you know, it was a challenge for me when I was doing different things. I'm like, who have I forgotten who have I left alone for too long? You know,
Yeah.
And I tried to get back to them. Yeah, Shad is our flaming A-type financial guy.
Yes.
And
yeah, like,
I have a friend who is a mega flaming A-type financial guy who gave me a lot of information for Shad's boss.
oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Shad is, you know, Shad's interesting because he was a high school football guy, but also very smart guy, very driven, went into finance, and he's rooming with Benji, which is just so nutty.
I love the combination of roommates.
And I think that it because Shad's such a good-hearted person, and I think he's conflicted as to, you know, does he follow his flaming A objectives, or does he, you know, just kind of back up and do what his heart tells him is right? And, you know, his heart's pretty good, right and true. And I feel like Benji is his, like, Jiminy Cricket. It's his little
right.
His little voice of what's right.
And I love that a lot of times I feel like the quirkiest people in our lives are the ones we really need to listen to.
Yeah.
They have a lot that they've experienced. They have a lot that they have fought and had to deal with. And I think a lot of times either you start out quirky and you deal with it, or you have held it in for so long and then you're finally like, look, I'm just going to be myself.
Right.
And all of a sudden you seem like you're quirky, but it's just like, no, this is just me.
And yeah, you don't know what people are saying when they're not talking.
Yeah, you know? I like that. Absolutely. So as we were talking, you mentioned the bosses, you know, and I realized
right.
And Shad, I know at least Steph and Shad have, you know, they mentioned the relationship with their boss and how they have to handle that. And then of course you've got everybody's parents, you have everybody's relationships with each other, be they romantic or just friends, or I can't figure you out, but I'm going to tolerate, you know.
Right. And then we've got the people that we see out the window.
Oh, right. The just sitting out and watching the line at the, what is it, the
supermarket line out front, and then the neighbors out back.
Right. And you know, I love how you are able to put those dynamics into all the different relationships, and as you do it, you reveal personalities and the layers of personality in each of the characters. And so that's just, it adds so much to the story. And I love that you do it in a fast-paced way. And so we're not losing the story, but we're also not bored. We're not bored at all. You know, there's no long explanations of what it looks like outside. You just have people reacting to what it looks like outside.
Right.
Or reacting to what the kitchen, you know, if it's a messy kitchen, they're talking about it. It's not just description, which description has its place. But I think in this story, the dialogue is just fantastic. And I love to hear
thank you. That's, you know, that's my favorite. That's the most fun part to write for me. I'm very much a dialogue person. That's my screenwriting background. I love writing dialogue, and I love writing dialogue for a lot of people. I was listening to NPR years ago, and they asked this question of writers. They said, if you could have written any scene in a movie that you didn't write, what would it have been? And these writers were saying, oh, that's such a hard question, so hard. And I thought, it's not a hard question. To me, without a doubt, the scene that I would have written in the movie is the end scene in Moonstruck by John Patrick Shanley. And it is all of them around the kitchen table. And if you've never seen the movie and you love character-driven comedy with heart, man, that is the one. It is so good. But that end scene has Cher and the boyfriend's brother and her parents and her aunt and uncle and her grandfather. And everything's coming and going, and they're talking, and everybody's got their own stories, and it's all coming to a head at the same time, and it meshes perfectly. And it's like, that to me is the best.
That is awesome. I love when things culminate at the end, you know.
Yeah.
I actually just read a book called The River House by G. Norman Lippert, and
Okay.
there's a scene in it where basically you've had this room that it's kind of a ghost story, but again, a slow burn. Like it's a long story, but there's so much mystery in it that you just want to know what's coming, you know.
Yeah.
But there's this one scene where there's a room that you've wanted to know what's behind the wall the whole book, and all of a sudden he decides, okay, it's time. He takes a sledgehammer to it, and I could just hear the symphony that would be playing during the movie, you know, and he's just slamming the sledgehammer, and all of a sudden all the pieces of the whole story is just coming together in his head, and he's figuring everything out, and it's just all during that time where he's just, you know, breaking this wall down. And, you know, I love those kind of scenes where it's just dynamically awesome, you know, it's just so big, and at the same time you're just getting the puzzle pieces are coming together, and it all culminates into that just grand scene. So I definitely, I see what you're saying about it all coming together in that one moment.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, my only mystery is the Fred.
The Fred, yeah, the cat.
Right.
The cat, maybe.
The cat. Maybe.
Yeah, I haven't figured that. Because Kimmy mentions at one point something about the Fred, and then I'm interested to see where that goes in book 3, for sure. I really want to get back together after book 3 if you are interested.
I'm happy to.
I love that. I think that would be a lot of fun. You know, you're probably going to get messages from me in between when I read it. I'm just fascinated by a story that can be this fast paced and not lose me. So
I'm glad, you know, I'm a fast writer, partially because there's so much to keep my head wrapped around. I'm afraid that if I take my time, I will lose, get away from me, because there are so many balls in the air. I think one time I'll write a book with just one main character, but I probably won't.
Do what you do best.
But yeah, and I enjoy a slow read. I mean, I'm a Michener fan. I've read a lot of them, but I'm just never going to write it.
Yeah.
It's not what I got.
Well, that's one thing that I have enjoyed doing on this channel. I'm fairly just starting out with this. I don't know if you call it a show or you call it a channel, but anyway, still getting into all the vocabulary. But I started out talking to G. Norman Lippert about his James Potter series, and it's a sequel to Harry Potter. And I just recently talked to JMD Reed about his foundation, or the book Foundation of Courage, which is the first book in his Shadow of the Dragon series. And then I talked again to G. Norman Lippert about the River House. And so it's been, a fantasy based around magic, and then it's been a fantasy, it's still magic, but it's also dragons. And then you have, the haunted story, and now we have the more modern adult kind of story. And so I love to see how all of it still is the human experience. All of it still is just different dynamics of who we are. And, whether we're, in a haunted place in our lives, or whether we're in a very snarky kind of, places, there's so much about people in general and our story as a whole that there's much to explore.
Yeah. And I think we kind of like to continue to try to discover ourselves.
Yeah.
Now my next series is going to be haunted and snarky.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. What's that going to be called? Do we have a title?
I'm not sharing the title yet because pretty much because the title is. Do you remember the movie that came out, Snakes on a Plane?
I haven't seen it.
There was
Sadly.
well, I never saw it either.
Oh,
But there
okay.
was a movie called Snakes on a Plane. And as soon as you hear the title, you're like, I know 100% what that movie is about. It's about snakes on a plane. And
Oh,
if I
right.
tell you the title, you'll know exactly what it's about. But I will say I'm dipping into vampires.
Oh, fun. Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh, a fast-paced vampire. That would
Yes,
be
it's snarky vampire time.
okay. I would
But
totally
with a twist.
interesting. Of course, there's a twist.
Yeah.
The lady who wrote about the joy. Of course, there's a twist. I
I
love it.
love the joy. I'd like to party with her. I just don't want to have to wake up the next morning.
Right, exactly. Speaking of party, there's a squeaky toy in the background. If you didn't hear that.
I didn't.
Okay. Well, no, I've got my sweet little big baby back there.
Puppy.
Yes, puppy. He's a sweetheart. His name is Odin. If you're into any Norse mythology, he's
Yeah, okay, I'm with you.
Odin. But well, it's 7 o'clock, so I guess I will leave it at that for today. But I did want to say thank you so much for coming on Author Talk with SJC.
My pleasure. And you'll let me know where I can tell people to find this, and I will tell people to find this.
Absolutely.
So my website is Honey Parker Books, because I like to be obscure. And you'll see, so from there you can get the first book, which is Careful-ish, the second book, which is Daughter of Careful-ish, the third book, Bride of Careful-ish. And there's also going to be a cocktail book, The Cocktails of Careful-ish. So Honey Parker Books, or you can go directly to Amazon, and you can go to careful-ish.com or daughterofcareful-ish.com. Will take you right to the books.
Okay. So I guess until we meet again, let's both be careful-ish.
I'll do my best. I always land on an ish.
Yeah, more ish than careful. Absolutely.
Stay careful-ish, my friend. All right, bye.